Hello everyone, my name is Ben Eady and I'm the Online Media Manager for ModernAnalyst.com, the premier online community for business analysts. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar titled "The Text is Dead, How Requirements Visualization is Changing the Game at HealthMEDX." Today's speakers are Mark Solomon and Petra Camacho from HealthMEDX. The webinar will last approximately 60 minutes, including a Q&A session. So make sure to submit your questions in advance using the questions feature on the webinar software. I would also like to say thank you to HealthMEDX for sponsoring this event, and at this time I'll turn it over to Petra and Mark to get us started.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, my name is Petra Camacho, and I'm one of the account executives here at iRise. After the presentation, if you're not familiar with iRise, I definitely encourage you to check out the website. It's www.irise.com. We have a lot of good information there and a free trial you can download, so definitely check that out afterwards. For the past year and a half, I've actually had the pleasure of working with Mark Solomon, who's the Director of Innovation at HealthMEDX. Mark's going to be speaking now about their iRise adoption and the subject of software visualization as a whole. We've left the end for questions and answers, so definitely if you think of some questions, type it in and we'll be addressing them at the end. So thank you very much for joining us today. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Mark Solomon.
Thank you, Petra. And as already been said, thank you for joining us, and a good morning to those who are in the West, and good afternoon to those in the central and eastern part of the states. What I want to do today is talk about visualization and how we have adopted it here at HealthMEDX. And just to give you a rundown of the agenda, what I'd like to do is talk just a little bit about our company and what we do and how we've where we are in the marketplace. I then want to talk about some problems and challenges we were having that we have looked to iRise and visualization generically to address. We'll talk about our journey. We've been doing this visualization using the iRise tool since the spring of '09, so we're 2 years into this. I want to be as transparent as I can be to kind of bring you through our journey and where we've come from and what we're doing today and what the benefits have been. I'll also cover what I believe are some best practices around visualization and simulations. And then, as Petra said, we'll be glad to entertain your questions at the end of the conference. And I will reserve certainly 10 or 15 minutes to do that. You can type those questions in on your GoToWebinar panel. If we're not able to get to all of the questions at the end, we will, Petra and I will go through them and make sure that we do address them via email and get back to you on those particular questions. So what I'd like to do is talk just a little bit about our company and what we do, and so it gives you a bit of a background of where we're coming from. HealthMEDX is a healthcare software company. We're based in Southwest Missouri between Springfield and Branson. What we focus on in the healthcare world is we focus on what's called the extended care segment, and that's going to be healthcare providers that are outside the walls of a hospital. And typically, we think of that segment of being things like home health care, hospice, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and these retirement communities, lots of times referred to as CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities. So that's the market segment we focus on. As a company, we've been in existence since 1999, so we're in our 11th year. We have 150 employees here in Southwest Missouri. From a customer base, we have approximately 300 customers. We target multi-site, multi-location, multi-care setting healthcare providers. These 300 customers have over 5,000 locations scattered in almost all 50 states. I think we're in like 45 states now. And those specific locations, if you get to the end user count, we are over now 250,000 end users. So when you have 200,000 users of your product, end users, anytime you go to make software changes, it obviously becomes a very delicate manner. As for myself, I've had 25 years of software development experience. It's been a combination of technical roles and management roles and director roles. And currently, what I focus on is designing and creating new innovative products to our product suite. So hopefully that gives you a little background of where we come from. We're not a huge company, but our user base is a large group of people in a lot of different care settings that use our product. So, what were our challenges, what I call pre-iRise? Why did we search out a better solution? And from a business requirements standpoint, we did, like many other organizations, we had a very manual, paper type of process. We had business requirements and functional specifications and technical specifications and all of these documents that were being produced. But what we were seeing, and even though we had a very, what I think is a very good and a very typical software development process, what we were seeing as a result is that too often when we were coming out with new releases, new versions of our software, that we simply were missing the target. We would have developed it to a specification, to a set of requirements, but when the software was actually hitting the street and into the end users, there was the inevitable, it's close, it's almost there, but you're missing this, you're missing that. There is some feature function that's, not quite in the right order and the right workflow. Never what I would call major misses, but yet it was not exactly on target. And when you have that happen, it leads to end user frustration. It led to frustration within our organization from the development and analyst area, because you want to hit the target, you want to solve the problem, and ultimately it ends up coming back and becoming rework that has to be done. So rather than moving on to the next project or the next version of software, you end up going back and tweaking and changing what you just worked on the prior year to get it right. And so, we were really looking for a way that would help us be more on target and more in step with what our end users did. So what we did, and kind of the way we came to the whole visualization and iRise piece, our CEO, Dr. Jim Atterbury, ran into iRise and looked at the product, introduced it to myself, and he and I spent some time, really looking at the product, looking at this whole idea and concept of visualization. And we went down a very typical path, and just like Petra mentioned earlier, one of the good things about the iRise product is you can download a fully functional version of the product. And so we did the 30-day trial and got familiar with the product, found it to be very easy to use, very natural. We then identified an initial project for a proof of concept. Another thing that was very helpful, the iRise folks were very good about providing pre-sales consulting, people to help us with this proof of concept. And so as we got more and more familiar with the tool, and we started looking at what visualization would do for us, we came to the realization that there were tremendous benefits from a software development standpoint, especially given how fast our company was growing and how large our user base was. We simply needed a way to visualize new features, the things we were doing with the software, before we actually commenced to constructing and developing it. So it was a very natural flow, and then we made the decision to move forward with the product. And so from how once we signed the product and got the contract and got the product in-house, I want to talk a bit about what we did internally to really adopt this whole concept of visualization. And the first thing we did is we redesigned our whole business requirements process around visualization, and really looked at how we could make visualization at the core of what we do from a business requirements piece. We also, when we implemented it, and there's a lot of ways you can implement a product, and given our size and that it wasn't a huge group of business analysts and product analysts, we made the decision once we were comfortable with the tool that any visual change we made to our product, we would simulate using the iRise tool and incorporate visualization into it. Even for the smallest of user interface changes, we made that leap from the very beginning, and it really has made all the difference, because there are just no exceptions to the rule. If it's a visual change, we simulate it, make sure we're good with it before we make the actual change in the product. So we changed process. We then brought in trainers to train us on the tool, and we did a week of intense education, all analysts in the room learning the product. We went in with actual projects to work on, so that our training was meaningful, and that we were working on, not working on a theoretical project or a theoretical product. We were working on actual problems we had excellent support from the iRise training staff. We also, as a part of this, designated a specific person on our team to be what we call the iRise super user. And that person's role was to own the relationship with the vendor. So any issues, any questions, any suggestions we have for the product all funnel through that super user, and that person becomes the single contact with the vendor, so that there's good coordination and good communication between us and the vendor. And it's really that person's responsibility to make sure we're using it effective, that we train new analysts on the product. And I'll talk more about that here in a little bit, about how we use the super user piece. We also committed very quickly after the training to start doing simulations and doing the whole visualization process. And I'll talk through how we had some successes, we had a few setbacks, how those came to be. But we didn't take the approach of dip our toe in it and try it. We saw the value, saw that we thought it could make a change in our company, and we committed to it and went to it very, very, very quickly. Okay, so now that we're a couple years into this visualization piece, I want to talk about how I think it has changed our behavior and our results that we see now in our software process. And the first thing I want to cover is visualization, I believe, has changed the way we analyze problems. There are, in my opinion, there are things that you can do in a visual simulation that are basically impossible to do in a paper-based business requirements piece. And, just to kind of cite a couple examples, we were authoring these text-based requirements, and basically everyone who would read that, I think in their mind, would formulate what they believe the solution was going to look like. And you would sort of visualize it in your own mind, and each reader would visualize it in their own mind. If you could get people to read the 30 or 40-page documents that we were producing, which was a problem. But when you actually simulate those changes and people see the software as if it's it can look like a finished product. It engages people in a different way from the analyst perspective. It forces you to look at workflow, design, how pieces integrate with each other. And what I found was when we were reviewing paper documents, a lot of our dialogue and our questions were more about trying to understand what was written. Once we visualized it and we had it where we could simulate it and put it on a screen where it looked like the product, instead of trying to understand it, that was obvious. Then it becomes more of an exercise of how to improve it. And, did you think about adding this or this feature or that feature, or what about how this looks compared to that? It really engaged us from an analyst perspective in a much deeper and a much more complete way. And one of the things we have found in our implementation is when we were more paper-based, ultimately when it would get to the developers to start constructing, there would be questions. What about, certain scenarios? That now is much more worked out in the visualization part and not in the construction part. So it's made that a much smoother transition for us. It's also changed the way we communicate internally and externally with customers. And one of the great things about iRise is once you have your simulation built, you can send it to your customers, whether they be internal departments, external customers like we have, and they can visualize and run through the simulation. And the feedback we get externally from non-technical types of customers is vastly improved from where we were when we were submitting them paper documents. When we were sending them the text-based pieces, we didn't get a lot of feedback, didn't get a lot of good feedback. Now with these simulations, we get very, very good feedback. Another thing that it allows you to do is this concept of test driving. And, common practice when we all go buy automobiles, we typically have test drove that vehicle before we actually purchase it and bring it home. Well, visualization gives you the ability to do basically the same thing in software development. And so you can actually test drive software changes before you ever commit to doing any of the programming or any of the development. And the feedback you can get during that test drive is very, very valuable. There have been a number of things that we have visualized and then realized maybe that wasn't needed, maybe we would do it a different way. And finding that out in the requirements design phase of development, rather than getting the whole thing programmed and getting a lot of dollars and a lot of investment into it, and then realizing you haven't gone the right direction. It's obviously much better to have that up front. So the whole test driving piece has been a big change. Another thing that visualization allows you to do is you can work in a more in a less linear fashion. We take things like test plans from our QA, quality assurance group, user documentation. Once the visualization is done and we know the software is basically going to look almost identical to that visualization, all the other ancillary things that go on in the software development process can happen from that visualization. And all of those things are better and more finely tuned from a visualization than they are from a paper document. Certainly the visualization gives everybody the same starting point. It's not subject to interpretation because you're actually seeing how, a cursor is going to tab from field to field, how screens are going to flow from one screen to the next. And you get the real experience, and it's the same experience for everybody who drives the simulation. The one thing, or at least another major thing I would highlight, is the whole software development process of doing iterations, looking at alternative ways, are much easier, much faster to do with a visualization tool than they are with a paper text-based tool. I mean, we have done a number of times now where we will simulate something, and when we get down to a particular feature or a particular area, and it's like you could do it one way, you could do it another, it's very easy to simulate both and then get people's feedback, get people's reaction to it, and it's the reaction to visually what the product is looking like. And so we're doing more iterations, we're looking at more alternative approaches, and the design that comes out of that is so much better than where we were in the text-based world. I would describe our experience in the text-based world as kind of a, you would review the documents, you would get feedback, but it was kind of a one-shot, one-approach type of design where visualization lends itself much easier and much faster to looking at multiple iterations and alternatives. The last bullet on this slide is something that, and this was very good in our sales process. Because we were in the healthcare segment, the folks at iRise lined us up with other people in the healthcare segment that was using the product. And the MD Anderson folks talked about how one of the benefits they saw was sometimes your user community believes they want something, they think they need it, they're sure they need it, and then once you get it programmed, they don't really use it. And so one of the things that is a good benefit of visualization is sometimes you get something simulated and you realize it's, what that thought or that idea had been really doesn't pay dividends enough to really invest in doing the development. So having a tool that even helps you eliminate what you shouldn't add to the product is valuable, because if you can determine that up front and see that it's not going to work like maybe somebody had imagined before you've invested all of the dollars in the actual construction and development of it, is another way that visualization saves you. So if you look at all of these collectively, it really has made a tremendous impact to the way we do our software development. And I know Dr. Atterbury and the principals will say that, we're 2 years into this and they feel it has fundamentally changed the way we are designing software and our ability to hit the target that we were previously not hitting as accurately as we would like. Okay. I want to talk about some different kinds of projects that we've used the visualization tool on. And we work on a wide variety of platforms, and we've found that the visualization works in virtually every situation. We have in our user group what we call a product advisory board. It's made up of some of our largest customers, and we annually give them a bucket of hours that they can use for product changes that they would like to see us make. And they go through a process and they vote on what they want to do. And then we take every one of those enhancements and we simulate those changes using the iRise tool. So we create a simulation. It's sent back to them. This is on our browser-based product, so they can see exactly how the changes that they're envisioning are going to look in the product. So it works very, very well with browser-based types of applications. Our mobile view project, was a project that was to create a product that was a Windows-based application, not a browser-based, but a Windows, because it needed to run disconnected in the homes for the home care customers. And we simulated this product, and the visualization and the simulation we created on this was was so good that we took it to trade shows and have people give us feedback. Would they be able to use it? And I'm going to say a vast majority of them didn't even really realize that it was a simulation. I'm sure they probably thought it was the real product. We've even had a number of times when we're reviewing simulations with customers that they sort of forget that it's a simulation and not the real product. So it worked very, very well for using it as a brand new product that, like I said, was a Windows piece. We also make use of this thing called widgets, where we, in our product, kind of like you can do on iGoogle or My Yahoo on your home screen, have containers of information that are applicable to your role in the organization. We use Silverlight to do that. We have successfully used the visualization and the iRise tool to simulate those types of widgets. It works really, really good for that kind of development as well. And then we're working on a new product that we are calling iCare, which is a physician portal application. And it's kind of our first iPad, iPhone application. And again, we found that using the visualization, even on a platform that's a little different than your typical PC or notebook, laptop type application, that it worked very, very well to visualize that whole piece as well. So, like I said, from the very beginning, when we basically, after we got through our training and reworked our processes, we came out of the gate with every project, anything we do a visual change to, a user interface change, we do it via the visualization tool. Another area that we more process-oriented that has really improved is now our whole review process, what we call requirements review, where all of our analysts meet twice a week and we review. What we're reviewing is simulations, iRise simulations of product changes that we're looking to make, and that's how we do all of our reviewing of business requirements and all that stuff. Our Blue Ocean team, which I'm a member of, is our ownership strategic team, and obviously they're very interested in the larger strategic projects we're working on. iRise has just really transformed that relationship so that they can see where we're going, what we're doing, what new products are going to look like, give input, make adjustments. There are a number of projects where we meet with them on a weekly basis because the speed at which you can do the visualization is so quick that there are meaningful changes for them to give input on, even on a weekly basis. And it's greatly improved that relationship, because with folks that are owners and strategic positions, they don't have time to read large text-based documents, but they can look at a visualization and respond to it, very, very quickly. So it really has, fostered and improved communication with key stakeholders. Okay. So talking, let's talk about kind of where we are now from a results standpoint. We track a number of different metrics. And one of the metrics we track, when there is a software, what I'm going to call a software defect, we categorize those into two different buckets. One of them is a bucket that we just call a known issue or a maintenance item, which is basically a programming bug. Software doesn't function the way it's intended to. It was a mistake made in the constructing or programming of the of whatever feature that relates to. We have another bucket we call functionality oversight, which is kind of a politically correct term for basically a design flaw. Basically, the software works right. It just doesn't, just the design of it or the way it works doesn't meet the need. This is basically the back to my beginning slide where we were missing the target. The reduction we have seen in functionality oversight over the past couple years is dramatic. And last I looked, it's an 80% improvement in, and I know among the management, the senior executive team, they feel like it's all but gone. And I'm going to say, not only are there fewer of them, but the severity of the ones that still get through are less significant than they were prior to us doing the visualization. Okay. Second point here. Basically, the whole visualization process has kind of permeated the whole organization in that even our sales group, our customer service group, everybody will talk about, if there's some feature a customer or prospect's interested in us doing. It's a part of our language now to say, we'll just iRise that. We'll just simulate that. And so the whole organization has been on board. And it certainly helps when your CEO is the person who founded and you have that strong executive support. But it really has, just filtered its way through the organization. Certainly it has improved communication with our end customers. Now we're, instead of talking techno language or business requirement language, they're seeing the visual change we're about to make in the product. Is the workflow right? Or is the right information there? Is it presented the way they need it presented? Has vastly improved our communications with customers. And, the frustration that I talked about as being a challenge at the beginning, now we're seeing, increased satisfaction, both the end user and the development team as a whole. It has really fostered to have a tool like that to help everybody get on the same page, get questions answered without all the going back and forth. Another point I would make, and many of you may be using an agile development methodology in your software development side of your places. This tool, this concept of visualization works well in an agile development methodology. We use an agile method here at HealthMEDX, and the tool just integrates naturally with the whole concept of the many iterations and the more nature of agile development. Okay. I want to spend just a few minutes on what I'm going to call best practices and some lessons learned during this journey. Number one item I put on my list is having a person responsible, what we call the iRise super user, is critical to the success. Having that one person that any of the analysts can go to when they've got questions, when they have suggestions for the product. That super user also manages all the new releases, keeps us up to date, provides supplemental training to what we received initially, and really having somebody that owns that role makes a huge difference. Secondly, realizing there's a different level of training required for different analysts. One of the questions, and probably one of the fears that we had when we first started down this journey, and some of you may have the same concern, is I knew as a technical person myself, I got it. I saw how the product worked, and I was going to be comfortable with it. But could somebody who is more from the business side, who doesn't have an engineering background, doesn't have a technical background, can a less technical person learn to do visualization, use a tool such as iRise? And, the answer to that is they absolutely can. On our team of analysts, we have 3 nurses who are RNs. They have worked in the medical field. They did not go to school for software. They did not go to school to do computers or any kind of technology pieces. These folks are doing simulations every week, and they're able to do it. Now, the thing that you have to realize from an implementation standpoint is the level of training required for that kind of resource versus somebody who may have come through a programming software development background. They're going to require additional training. They're going to require maybe a little more hand-holding with the product to realize how to do it. But I've been very excited at how fast people who are what I'm going to call non-technical in education and non-technical in their background can do visualization and use a tool like iRise. Next point, from a how do you gain speed and efficiency at doing these simulations? And this is one of the roles of the super user, is we have what I'm going to call a library of reusable components, meaning that there are a lot of things that you use in simulations that you can reuse in future simulations. So our super user, who also happens to be our user experience graphical type person, he basically has created for us a library of items that allow us to, every time we need a text field or a checkbox or a screen of this kind, the colors are right, the fonts are right, all that kind of stuff is there, and we just keep reusing the same stuff over and over again. Creates a lot of efficiency for us in being able to do these simulations. Certainly, another important element is staying current on releases and updates. One of the things we found is with the folks at iRise, we get regular updates with fixes in the product. We get usually a new release with more major features once or twice a year. We've had very good results with those upgrades, all that type of stuff. So that's but staying current on that is an important thing to do. This next bullet, define when to use low fidelity versus high fidelity simulations. And we probably err on the side of making ours too high fidelity. And what we mean just to make sure everybody's on the same page, high fidelity is trying to make it pixel perfect, like it looks like the finished product. Low fidelity is more, maybe not as graphically pleasing to the eye, but is more conceptual and just trying to get basic flow and pieces, together. So obviously the low fidelities you can do faster, and the high fidelities take more time. And getting a handle on when to do one versus the other is a balance you have to learn to strike. And what we like to do is we tend to take on any problem we're looking at. We like to look and define 2 or 3 good options of solving that particular problem. And we would do those in more of a low fidelity state. Then once the stakeholders and we've gotten feedback and one approach comes out as the preferred approach, then that's when we kind of shift into the make it a high fidelity simulation that then we're able to end with something that's more high fidelity. Another best practice, just like anything you go to change, some people adapt to change better than others, and in your organizations who the people are that will be quick and open to change, and who will be the ones who try to hang back and want to stick with the old process. We basically took a very hard line on this and said, we're not going to even allow the option of going back. And like is human nature, we had one or two who fought against that, didn't want to go there. But I'm going to say within the first 12 months, providing them the right kind of training, the right kind of support, realizing we weren't going to support two different ways of doing software development, that even those who were reluctant to change now are very supportive and very positive. Last point on this is the whole make it fun, keep it positive. I think anytime you're reviewing something, when you're reviewing a person's work that's where they've authored it, there can be a sensitivity to somebody being critical or about the writing. I think that even is highlighted more in a visual environment, and especially if you have a situation like we did, where we had 2 or 3 people from our software development side of the house who were creating these simulations that were just knock your socks off, looking awesome. And then we had other analysts who, they're still learning the tool. That wasn't their background, so theirs were a little rough and a little, so you kind of had the environment when you're doing the reviews. Wow, here this one person's simulations look great. This other person, you can tell maybe is not quite the simulator that another person is. So you got to do those management things you do to keep it fun. Try to keep people on the same level, not feel intimidated about getting theirs out there, and provide them the right level of support. I know our super user, who's our main graphics guy, he will give the folks who maybe aren't quite as the same proficiency of a simulator, he'll give them a little more help and support and make sure he's smoothed out the corners so their simulations look good as well. So very important to try to, like any change, you have to make a change management type of program and manage to that to go from text-based to visual, but very much well worth the journey. So, kind of from a future plans standpoint, we certainly realize we're only a couple years into this, and there's always room for improvement and to take it further. One of the things we're doing week after next is we're bringing the iRise folks back in to do some follow-up training. We've got some new analysts that didn't go through the formal training in the beginning, so we want to get them up to speed. And then a few of us who are more of the super user types of simulators are looking to get some additional training for us on some of the new features that have come out in the software in the last 6 months to a year. And then secondly, we're also still working on integrating the whole simulation process into the other departments and making sure they're making the most of what these simulations offer. And there's some real advantages here that people will sometimes miss. There, a lot of times from these ancillary departments, the belief had been, well, until the software is done, you can't really start working on your implementation materials or how you might change your sales message or documentation. And you could use the text-based requirements to do some of that, but then the software didn't end up looking like the paper, and so people kind kind of got it put off. And one of the things that we commonly hear now is somebody will say, when after the software is done, is, well, that looks just like the iRise. Well, that's the point. That's what it's supposed to do. So it really, those simulations really allow these other departments an opportunity to get started much earlier on their pieces of what they need to do as a result of the software changing, rather than waiting till the end and starting their process then. So you can actually shrink the amount of time it takes to get a release done and out the door. So I would say it's been a good journey. It's been a very positive one, I think there's no way we would go back to that paper-based world. So with that, we've got about 15 minutes left. Let me go to the question-answer panel, and if you've got questions and you haven't submitted them yet, go ahead and do so. Okay, the first question is from Henry. Is iRise product being used as a requirements document as well, or are the requirements articulated through a separate document? Great question. I talked a lot about the visualization and simulation part of it, and that's the part I like. But we absolutely are still capturing the requirements, the textual requirements inside of iRise. So we use the iRise product to do that, and it has a very cool way of allowing you to associate a textual requirement with a visual element of a screen. And so iRise has two modes. It can operate in what's called the simulation mode, where you see the software and just the graphics, where you can be in the document mode, whereas you go from screen to screen, you see all of the textual requirements and how they relate to the screen. And then you can also export those out to Microsoft Word. You can print them if there's a reason to see them in a printed format. So we absolutely keep all of our business requirements within the iRise document. Okay.
Just add too, there's a lot of really good questions here, and unfortunately we won't be able to address all of them. At the end, I will get a list of all of the questions with your contact information, so we'll try to follow up with each and one of you. Just a general statement here. Someone had asked at the beginning if this was going to be recorded. Yes, if you go to ModernAnalyst.com /webinars, it will be posted there if you want to share that with anyone else in your organization. There was another question, too, about a demo. We're actually not going to show one right now, but every Tuesday and Thursday, we do a web demo for anyone. You just need to go to iRise.com, sign up for that. It's every Tuesday and Thursday, 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Central Time. So feel free to go to our website and sign up for the Tuesday, Thursday demo. Every Friday, we offer a mentoring session as well. That's really helpful if you've downloaded the trial already and you're starting to learn the software on a current project. So the mentoring sessions are every Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 Central.
Thanks, Petra. Another question was, what means do you use by simulation? Do you use wireframe mockups, prototyping, both or neither? Another good question. When I say the word simulation, we're using the iRise tool to do that simulation. It basically allows you to put screenshots in there, and the simulation is done within the iRise tool itself.
When you were talking about resistance to change or doing something new, adopting iRise, someone had typed in a question about that. What was the resistance? And what we found, and it sounds like that was the situation at HealthMEDX as well, there's always those folks that are resistant to change, trying something new, but this isn't the way we've always done it. I've found that with some of our customers, that's usually the resistance on adopting iRise. And, like you mentioned, Mark, once they start using it and see the value, then that's usually where the attitude kind of changes. But that's what I found for the majority of our customers is just learning a new technology and just changing the way your company is doing business. Yes, it's a definite change, but, it can make things a lot more efficient. On average, we found someone had asked about metrics on ROI. We have about 450 or so customers. On average, what they tell us is they get to market twice as fast by using iRise. So they're accelerating time to market with their applications by 50%. And meanwhile, they're reducing their project cost on average by about 30%. So someone had asked about some metrics, so just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a good question from Richard. Can you help us understand just how robust your application prototypes are in iRise? How many features, I think it means function counts, does your software have? For example, could SAP use iRise? Let me give you an idea of how big our application is. The web-based part of the product is about 4,000 to 5,000 ASP pages. And then there are a couple hundred .NET assemblies and then untold numbers of stored procedures. The one thing to keep in mind with iRise, just because you could simulate your whole product doesn't mean you should. And so what we tend to do is focus on just what is the part that we're changing. And I mean, we have iRise simulations that are as simple as, 4 or 5 pages because we're only changing, one screen, one dialog box, to those that are literally 40, 50, 100 pages long. You can interconnect simulations where one simulation calls another. So there is not a project or a company that in my mind would be too large to use iRise. The thing to do is from a scoping standpoint, is to make sure you're only simulating for the part that you're actually changing.
Mark, there's another good question here. Someone had asked about the advantage of the iRise simulation over showing a screen design in, say, PowerPoint, is what Sonia Khanna had asked. And, a static screenshot, something in Visio or PowerPoint, doesn't give you any functionality behind it. You can't really test drive that and see the business logic and functionality. And that's what you get with iRise, those users being able to really test drive it like it was the end product to give you meaningful feedback so you know where the changes should be made. Is this good? Is this not good? How do we want to move forward with this? You just don't get that in PowerPoint or Visio or some of the other design tools out there.
Yeah, that's so true, Petra. A static image is a static image where, the simulations we're talking about, you can make it where users tab through the field, they can enter data. When there's a button and they push it, it can display the dialog box that it's, whatever action is going to happen from pushing that button. I mean, it truly is, a test drive of the software as opposed to a static image. Another question here, I've seen this one a couple times in the list. What if you don't use agile? Can you use it, with other kinds of methodologies? And absolutely, it fits nicely with agile, but if you're using more of a waterfall method, anything that you're using, regardless of your methodology, that requires analysis and of product changes, iRise fits the bill very well for. Oh, here's an interesting question. This one would be for you, Petra. How much does the iRise product cost?
Okay, I actually saw that question. A couple of people had asked that. It really depends how many users we're looking at and what I can do. The best way to address that is email those folks, get them on the phone, have a conversation, and find out a little bit more about how they plan on using iRise and how many users we're talking about. We're just kind of talking general now. We have our iRise Studio, which is our authoring tool, and our iRise Definition Center, which someone had asked about a library of assets or sharing assets for future use. Our Definition Center is the place where you'll build a library of assets to use over and over, so you don't have to rebuild them each time. And that's where we would store it, on the iRise Definition Center, which is a piece of server software that you would have there at your location. Think of it as like the central repository or the collaboration hub where anyone involved on a project would go to, just that one central point. So I do see that there were a couple of questions regarding pricing, and I'll reach out to each of those folks individually so we can have a conversation offline.
Okay. Another one kind of related question is from Brandon. Are you storing your reusable components as masters in iRise? Do you store them externally as well? We do make use of masters in iRise, which is a way of keeping things standard across multiple projects. We also have when we start a new simulation, we, instead of starting from just a blank screen, we have a template project that we bring in and always start with it, and it has pages in it with all of our reusable components. And then, like Petra was saying, we use the Definition Center to store everything centrally. It helps it becomes like a source code control type system where people can get access to it, and it can easily be backed up from a disaster recovery piece. And that piece is very important. It's clear how the visualization improves communication with the end users. Does the visualization also replace the technical documentation that is provided to developers of the actual product? Really good question. You're right. The visualization with end users is excellent, and it gives the developer a very clear picture of, what the target is, what the end product needs to look like, all of that kind of stuff. But it does not replace doing technical documentation or technical specifications. To me, the iRise is the document you hand off to the technical people, and then they still, from that, need to construct their designs and technically how they plan to accomplish that functional design that you've simulated in iRise. So, what we did in the past is we had a Word template for the business requirements, and there was a Word document for the technical requirements. iRise replaced the Word document, so we hand off simulations, but they still have to do their design work. That's good question.
Thank you, Mark and Petra, for a very informative presentation, and thank you to everyone for attending today's Modern Analyst webinar. I wanted to point out that the webinar, along with the slides, will be archived at ModernAnalyst.com within a few days. This concludes today's event, and we hope you have a great day.